to the Celtic Craft Studio. I'm Terry, and today we are going to start a new project. We are going to start a journal, and these are the journals that I started on as an Etsy seller. So I'm going to show you, and I did them totally from scratch. We do journals many ways, but this journal is made from an envelope, and I create the cover, and then I put things inside. And I have varying stages of journals here, so we're going to kind of look at some different journals and the different stages, just to give you an idea of how to make the cover, because that's what we're going to start with. And then we'll put some pages in, and then we'll work on ephemera. So let's get started. Here I have my 10 by 13 envelopes, and I get the press and seal. I get the press and seal because you have to close this flap, and if there's a clasp on it, you're going to have to take the clasp off. So I prefer the press and seal so you're not messing with the clasp. All right, so let's take the strip off. I fold it first so you get a nice fold. And there you go. You got that down. Now, this for me is too big for a journal. 10 inches is way too high for the journal that I'm doing. Now, there might come a time when you need a 10-inch journal, and there you go. But I'm going to have to cut this down, so let me get my cutter. It's not going to fit in my chomper, so I'm going to have to get this. And we're going to take it and we're going to cut it down. Now, and I better flip it the other way. It's just going to be easier. Now, most of my journals are between 9 and 8 inches. So, I mean, I can do 8 1/4, 8 3/4, 9. I'm going to do 8 1/2 just for today's demonstration. It'll kind of depend on what pages you're using. If you're using a multitude of pages that, you know, it doesn't matter, then you get to make it the size you want. But if you're using a journal kit and the pages are a certain size, then you need to take that into consideration. All right, so we're making this 8 1/2, which means I'm cutting this off. Now my cutter isn't long enough, so it doesn't cut it all off. So then I have to get my scissors, and I have to clip like that. Okay, move this, get rid of our garbage. I'm sure you can use this little strip for something. If you can, save it. All right, so here we have our 8 1/2 by 13. Okay, so then I'm going to take my glue, and I'm going to glue this shut. Now, you don't necessarily need to do this step because we are going to adhere the cover on, and it will fold over, but I just do this. You know, better safe than sorry. And, you know, I found out the hard way sometimes that you don't want to skip steps. So let's glue this down, this shut. Okay. All right, I'm going to set this aside. Like I say, I have varying stages, varying books or varying journals in process. Here, let me show you the cover of this one. I like that. Isn't that pretty? That'll be a nice one. I haven't decided on the innards of this yet, but that'll be a nice one. My fabrics, I go to Hobby Lobby, I go to the fabric department, and I see what they have in their sales bin. I like to get upholstery material, but obviously I don't want to buy a whole yard of upholstery material, especially at the price upholstery is. But Hobby Lobby takes their ends and throws them in the sales bin. So that's where I like to look first. And it's where I find a lot of my material. So just a hint, go look at Hobby Lobby. All right, now we need to measure where the spine is. Now you can make your spine any size you want. Mine are typically 2 inches. So I take my ruler, and it's obviously going to be short because this is 13 inches. But you can do a little math in your head, okay? Half of 13 is 6.5, and I'm going to mark that spot, okay? Then I'm going to add an inch on either side. I'm going to do a 5.5 and a 7.5, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the very same thing, making sure your ruler's lined up. This is kind of like baking. You can't cut corners. You need the exact, and I already see I'm off here. So let's erase that one. Make sure our ruler's right at the end. 6.5, 5.5, 7.5. And then I'm going to take that and I am going to draw. I'm going to try not to get my head in the shot and draw a straight line. This will be a trick today. And get lined up. You don't want that middle line, you just want the outer line to give you an idea. And I'll show you why in a minute. Oops, and I bobbled with my finger, which is okay. It doesn't matter. That's going to get covered up. All right, and then I take a sturdy piece of cardboard, and what I usually use, as you see, is the back of a Tim Holtz pad or the front of a Tim Holtz pad, because they're usually pretty thick. They're thicker than the paper. And I cut them down into 2-inch strips to use for the spine, because you want something in the middle of your envelope here to make it sturdy so that you can fold it into a journal and have that spine. And I always do a hidden spine. Well, I won't say always. Most of the time I do a hidden spine. And so that's another reason to have this in here to help with your hidden spine, which we'll go into probably next week. All right, so let's move this one aside. And here we have another piece of upholstery fabric, another beauty. And you want to think about, before you iron this on, which way you want this to go. Typically I have my cut to the bottom, which might be, let's look and see. I like that. Yeah, I think I like that more. So yes. All right, so we have our cut to the bottom. I must have been thinking about that. Once again, a piece of upholstery fabric that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. And then what I did was I took Heat and Bond. I like Heat and Bond. Something that's a little sturdy. I don't think you want the lightweight. I think you want something a little better than the lightweight, because you want this to hold and not come off. And I cut it. I'm not precise about my cut at all. I just lay my journal cover on and make sure that I have, this is probably less than an inch, but it'll do because we're going to put something over it. Okay. So I've measured out my 6.5, 5.5, 7.5. So I have my spine has been glued in and trimmed off. And then I iron the envelope onto the piece of fabric that has the heat and bond. All right, so it's bonded. Okay. All right. Then what we are going to do is cut our corners kind of like you do with pockets, because you want to get rid of the bulk. So I come down at an angle, leaving, I'd say that is less than a quarter, maybe an eighth. And then you go off at this angle. Am I in the shot? Okay, let me turn it so you can see it. So it looks something like that. Like I say, it's like your pockets. It's like that angle cut that you have on the pockets. And you're going to do that all the way around, trying to get close, but you don't want to go in too far because you don't want your paper showing. Okay. All right, we got another corner there. Okay. Turn it and do the other two. All right. I think we can put our ruler back so it's not distracting us here. Then we're going to do the last corner. Okay. Add an angle. And another angle. Okay. There we have. And then we would take our iron and iron down. What I do is I iron the long sides down first, and then I fold these ends to make sure I have a nice crisp corner. Okay. All right. So let's put that aside. Move along to our next one. This one, I'm eager to start. Here, let's put this. That's the guts for that journal. I'm eager to get going on this one. This is, every year, if you know me, every year I make a fairy journal. This is this year's fairy journal. And I'm looking forward to it. I love this fabric. Have I decided which is the front and which is the back? Maybe. All right. So here we have it ironed down. My fabric has been ironed in. Okay. It doesn't matter how neat, how straight, how whatever this is, because what you're going to do is line your journal. Okay. I found a piece of purple paper. I can already see it needs to be, because there's a little white. So let's go ahead and ink around so we don't have any white. I don't want white. You know, sometimes I don't use antique photos. Sometimes I use other colors. I've been known to use gold on Christmas journals. I've been known to use blue. So, you know, if you want to use a color instead of using the vintage photo, go for it. Tim may very well have a purple, or somebody have a purple that goes with this. All right. And that will get glued down, which I'm not going to show you today either. I'll bring it back and show you. I have this much glue left, but glue is on the way. So hang on. Hang on. All right. So that'll be, and once you glue this down, let it dry. Do not get overly excited and feel like you've got to fold it right now, because that will cause a problem. You will get all kinds of puckering that you don't want. So glue it down, leave it overnight, okay? Try to be patient, and you're talking to a person who's not very patient, so. All right, I'll just for fun show you the fairy journal, shall I? Some journals that I make, I actually use cardstock. The one we're going to do does not have cardstock, so it's up to you. Sometimes I sew. In fact, I will be sewing this one, so I haven't finished. But I purchased the Graphic Fairy. No, not Graphic Fairy. What's the name of it? Oh, I should have written it down because I don't remember. I don't remember whose paper this is. Oh, I think it's Graphic 45. But I did not use all Graphic 45 journal pages. I used somebody else's journal pages and then just used the cardstock as a cover and a center. Okay. And then I have all these beautiful pages, fairy pages, in all kinds of pastel-y colors. So I'm looking forward to doing this one. And I'll have 3 signatures. My journals that I started with, I did 2 signatures. And just recently I started doing 3. 2 has always worked for me. I'll show you one that has 2. But, you know, you do you. Whatever you want. Maybe you only want 1 signature. I don't know. Maybe you want 2. Maybe you want 3. You just have to consider, once you make it, here's one that's complete. Let me show you this. This is one I started for the autumn and didn't finish it because things got busy in the autumn as usual. So as you see, we've got the material, and here we have the paper that was glued in. I make another strip with the card and paper, and that's the part, that's the hidden spine that we're going to sew into, and this has 2. Now, I've never had a problem with 2 because they always get so full that there isn't this huge gap here. That's usually my saving grace because I do have a tendency to fill them full, and this one is my autumn with all these lovely pages. I can't wait to finish this one. I don't know if it'll get finished before the autumn. Hopefully it'll show up in the shop for autumn. So that's 2, and that's what a completed journal looks like. Okay, now, well, I guess I'll do that on ours. Let me get, if I can find them. Maybe that. Maybe I have to wait. Nope, there they are. Okay. This is something else that I do on my journals. And I usually do this toward the end, so this is a good time to do this on this one, because even though I'm decorating, we can put these on. You can get these on Amazon. They are corners, and to me, they just add a little something, something. So let's glue a couple of those on. It also helps your, as it's meant to do, it helps your corner so it doesn't get mucky. Now, the one thing I have learned is be careful how much glue you put on this. because you do not want to have a bunch of glue oozing out. So just kind of touch the important pieces. I kind of rub, and instead of holding it up in the air and letting it drip, I squeeze a little and let it rub on. You get a feel for it. Okay, let's put this on, making sure it's right at the corner. And what I would do, and he's bent a little, so let's bend him back the other way. Okay, let's put one more on. What I usually do is I glue them on the front, and then I let those dry for a while, and then I'll do the back. Once again, you do not want to get in a hurry, because that's when things get a little messy and you make mistakes and it gets a little sloppy. So take your time. If you have to start another project, and then you can come back. Maybe that's why I have so many projects going. I don't know. I do have quite a few, but, you know, I've seen enough videos to know I'm not the only one. Okay, so there's our corners. Love that with this. And I'm going to put this aside, and we're going to let it dry. And then we will go back to the journal we're working on. And I'll just kind of give you some thoughts if you want to kind of go and gather the stuff you have. I decide, when I start a journal, I decide on a theme, a color, something that gets me going a certain direction. You know, this is dry, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off. And I started with Marley Designs set here. And let me find the name of the set, and then I can show you. This is her set, and if you watched the postal theme journal that we were working on, that's where I found these. I was looking for red and blue things, and I found Marley's set that I absolutely love. And so I thought, oh, wouldn't those make a great journal? I think I told you that. Here's some of the pieces. Okay, in reds and blues, and I like that. And the name of this set is Marley Design Time-Stamped Ephemera. Let me get you so you can see that. Marley Designs Time-Stamped Ephemera. So if you go on Marley's website, Etsy, I think I got it from her Etsy shop, you can download this one. But I thought, you know, I'm ready for flowers. Usually after Christmas, I am definitely ready for flowers. And so I tried to think of one of the kits I already had that might go with Marley's set. So what I came up with was a set by Cotton and Twig. And unfortunately, I've looked everywhere. I got this several years ago, and Cotton and Twig is not available on Etsy anymore. I don't know if she's someplace else, if she's under another name now, I don't know. But if you're the shop owner of Cotton and Twig, let us know. So I picked this set. You could pick any other floral set, or you can just stick with Marley's set. Kind of up to you. Okay, so I went ahead and mixed the two sets together because I thought they were perfect together. So I cut out and once again decided I was going to do 3 pages. So I gathered all my journal pages to make sure I had the journal pages for what I wanted. And then I got Marley's papers and I interspersed my papers, Marley's papers, no, Cotton and Twig, Marley's papers, my tea-dyed paper, which I have mentioned before, but I will mention again. Isn't that beautiful? I get my tea-dyed papers from an Etsy shop called Vintage Style Snippets. Her name is Nell, and she lives near Scottsbluff, Nebraska. I was born and raised in Nebraska, so I like supporting Nebraskans. And she has the most beautiful tea-dyed papers. So go check her out. Say hi to Nell and tell her I sent you. I think she may even have a YouTube channel. And what's fun about Nell's shop is she has other things besides the tea-dye stuff. I think she does a little antique shopping. Because occasionally you'll find some quilts and some other antique things that I'm sure she's found in one of the small towns near Scottsbluff. Unfortunately, here I live in Denver, Colorado. And in Denver, Colorado, there are antique shops, but the antiques are a little pricey. So I love small towns in small town America where you can go in and find some great deals. And I think Nell may live in one of those towns. Anywho, this is her paper, and you will find her paper in here several times. I also like to add Edith papers. And this is my Edith Holden paper that I've put in this one. And I have some straw paper, and I'll show you how I punch those. Okay, we'll do that next time when we kind of put everything together. And I'll show you this part too. In the center, I usually, and I'll show you this when we sew it. Next time we get together next week, I'll show you how I actually sew into the hidden spine and then attach it to the cover. Okay, and it includes an envelope. Okay, I like to hide my strings. Some people like the strings, but I like to hide them, and I'll show you how next week. So these are the papers. This is what I'm going with. I think I've picked a paper for this. In fact, I think I'm going to do a Roxy thing, and I think I'm doing a patterned paper. Something like this. I think I'm doing a patterned paper over here. And then I think I am going to do a book page, a title page, because I love some of the antique title pages. And that might be cool with the graphics and the fonts and all the things that are in this journal. So that is my direction. That is what we're going to be doing. I've been working on a journal lady for the front. I was torn, and now I'm not now. Now that I've had time to think about it, I was thinking maybe yellow, and then I thought, there's not yellow in it, even though there's kind of a beigey color. Then I was thinking a red stripe, and I thought, I think it's too busy. So this is what I landed on. I landed on this color. Usually I put my picture toward the top, so there's room for a plate down here. So I believe she is the one going on this journal. So that is the project we will be working on. If you have any questions for me, if you have any questions about making the actual cover, which is super easy. I mean, you don't need a lot of stuff. You go to an office supply, go to Walmart, and get manila envelopes. Use the, scrap pads. Doesn't even have to be a Tim Holtz scrap pad. It can be any scrap pad. Use the back of the scrap pad for your binding in the middle of the journal for your piece there. And then, like I say, I got my fabric on sale. So easy, easy, easy journal, and yet I think it makes a beautiful presentation. I think it's a beautiful effect. So once again, if you have any questions, let me know. I will try to answer them. Next time we will talk about actually, I'll get the stuff put in here so you can see it, and then we will talk about attaching all of this to the hidden spine. I'm sure you've seen people sew signatures into journals before, and it's not a pretty thing sometimes, but hopefully I'll make it interesting and not too cumbersome. So we'll do that, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do for ephemera in our journal. Okay? Thank you for joining me. I want to say hi to Twyla. Twyla added a comment last week. I'm glad to have Twyla with us. She's a faithful follower of my Etsy shop, and I really appreciate those that have been with me for a while and now they're coming on board the YouTube. I'm glad to see them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. And until the next time, let's get crafty.